Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and this is Elite Dangerous. The latest patches, the Engineers patch 2.1 as well as patch 1.6 are due on the live servers later today. Now, they may already be there by the time you watch this video, but there's also the possibility that you still could be waiting for them a bit longer. In either event though, I thought it worthwhile to have a look over the past few weeks of beta and talk about some of the points and some of the things you can go out there and check for yourselves now. One of the first things that caught my attention, one of the first things I actually wanted to check out, was the updated graphics within patch 2.1 and 1.6. They're quite a significant upgrade in fact. This affects just about every area of the game. One of the more notable locations, of course, is down on Planetary Surfaces, which now have new surface material. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of a problem with some of the planetary surfaces in that the resolution of the texture is a little bit low, and there's also some low geometry going on there. But Frontier have confirmed that this is a bug, and they're hoping to fix at least a part of it within the patch 2.1 release going to the live servers today. But some of the fixes are going to have to wait until a later patch. No ideas when that will be, although based on past experience it could be as late as patch 2.2, but no telling on that just yet. And at any rate, they do look significantly better for the most part, especially when you're right down on the surfaces themselves in your SRV. If you look here at the images, you can see all that detail down here, and you can also see some of the scree there on the steeper inclines. This really does make quite a difference. One of the other areas to look at, of course, is the Asteroid Systems. These have been updated, all types of them, the metallic ones, the rocky ones, as well as the ice ones. Otherwise, they're still not as good as they were perhaps during the premium beta stages of the game. They are now significantly better than they were over the previous few months. If you ever use the external cam, then, and if you don't, I really do encourage you to do so, check out your ships. You'll see that all the ships, or at least the majority of ships, have now got a vastly improved material structure to them. They look a lot better than they did previously. This is really noticeable on things like the canopy, and it's especially noticeable on some of the more reflective surfaces of the ships themselves. And of course, there's these station interiors. You'll notice that these look a lot better. They've got a foggy element to them, the lighting's a lot better, and overall I feel this gives a lot more depth to the stations. The big thing that you're going to want to check out though, the headline feature for this update is of course the engineers themselves. Now during beta there was only 8 or so of these engineers actually available, and there is going to be 30 of these in release. So I'm looking forward to people locating the ones that weren't actually in beta. Now the question was raised to Michael Brooks, or it might have been Sandro Tomarco, I can't quite remember, as to whether there's some engineers located in deep space, and they didn't really want to answer that question, so it would seem, to me at least, that there's going to be engineers located all over the place. Now my expectation also is that these engineers, the ones that weren't in beta, are going to be modifying parts of the ships that we totally haven't been expecting so far, which essentially means that there's perhaps a few unannounced features into the game. These may be fairly minor, or they could be quite significant. We'll have to wait and see. Like I said many times before, pure speculation on my part, but based on the things that Michael Brooks have said, he has confirmed that they've held a few things back for the official release of the patch. This could well be something we're going to see. But as to all the other upgrades that the engineers actually perform for us, there's a lot of them. What one are you planning on going out and getting first? I'm not sure what it's going to be for me. I think it will probably be an FSD upgrade. Let me know in the comments below what you're most excited for in that regard. Now, for me though, the problem will be just how much work it takes to get these particular upgrades. We won't know until the first visit to the engineers. Obviously on the beta servers there was some fake or temporary requirements. They only required fish, for example. Their requirements are going to be much more harder than that, much more significant than that, and it will depend then how long it actually takes to get any particular module upgrade. And for me at least, this will greatly affect just how much effort I put into the engineers. If you are following along on the forums or Reddit, you will no doubt be very much aware of the controversy that was surrounding the engineers themselves and the RNG, the random number generator mechanic that underlies their whole entire upgrade process. A lot of feedback was given to Frontier on this, and they did take some of it on board, but perhaps unfortunately, or fortunately depending on how you look at it, they did also say that the RNG elements are not going to go away. That is the foundation of how they want things to be, and that's how they're going to remain. But one significant change that is going to come a little bit down the line, it's not going to be on the live servers today, but it hopefully won't be too far away, is going to be the ability for us to dictate exactly what special effect on weapons we want to have. Now, this will come at a reputation cost. In effect, it's going to be in the context of a game calling in a favour of the engineer, and they won't look upon it too positively, which will mean you'll lose a bit of reputation, meaning you'll have to go back out and gain it again. Now, if you're into all the details on what these module upgrades and weapon upgrades are going to do for you, along with some good ship builds, I highly recommend you go and check out Kornelius Briedis' YouTube channel. You can see some of the video footage of his here on the screen right now, and essentially he goes into a massive amount of detail on all of these weapons, all of these upgrades, and just what they can be used for and how effective they actually are. It really is a one-stop shop for everything you need to know about module upgrades, and just what sort of build you might want for your ship. He's tested out just about every combination you can think of. One thing about Kornelius Briedis is that he really does know his stuff. He knows what he's talking about, and he knows all the stats and details for everything he actually takes his hand to. So if you want to see the effect of certain modules or certain weapons, or if you just don't know what type of ship build you actually want, do head on over to Cornelius' YouTube channel, because he's got dozens of videos there explaining everything you need to know. Of course, as usual, you can see a link in the video description below. Now, talking of engineers, one thing that's got to be mentioned is the engineers' bases themselves. Now, up until this point, there of course have been a lot of bases and settlements within the Planetary Surface and the Horizon season, but the engineers' bases are somewhat different in that they're all handcrafted, and they all actually look very different to each other. Of course, many of them use the same sort of modules and similar assets, but they're all laid out in a very different way, and they each have a very distinct personality to them. For me, I found it very enjoyable just flying around these bases and discovering exactly what they were like. It's one of the many elements within this patch update that adds a lot more life to the game. The other elements, of course, are the NPC picture avatars that are on the mission board, as well as the traffic control system that's now been introduced around the large stations, something you're going to notice immediately upon your first approach to them. Now, when you do go out and get some missions, you'll notice that although they're the same old missions, that something is quite different about them. You'll notice that they're more alive and a bit better structured. The Assassination Missions are a good example of this. You may remember the old Assassination Missions where you used to have to head out and check a random unidentified signal source for a guy in an Anaconda or whatever other ship. It now no longer quite works like that. If you've got the Horizons update, you'll be sent to a planetary installation to hack a computer in order to retrieve the target's location. And in some cases, those bases can be very difficult to actually infiltrate. They're usually patrolled by ships, as well as skimmers, and of course various turret defences as well. Previously, you could simply just drive into these bases with your SRV, but if you try that now, there's a good chance you're going to get yourself destroyed. These bases will actually be perfect for a wing. Unfortunately though, Frontier still haven't installed a way to share the mission rewards, or indeed to share the mission itself. There's been some significant changes to the signal sources you find in space. They're no longer quite as random as they used to be. Gone are the weak signal sources and the strong signal sources. Now everything is an unidentified signal source until you actually get close to it, select it and scan it, at which point it will reveal itself to you exactly what it's likely to contain. In addition to that, these signal sources spawn in locations that are suited to the contents of them. For example, you can find shipping lanes where NPC traffic is moving between a station and a planet, for example. You're more likely to find a signal source there that contains trading ships. And this adds another way of picking up the various different materials that are required for crafting with the engineers. Now, some of these materials are actually physical, much like the stuff we collected down on planets for synthesis, and other of these materials are data points. The data points actually work by selecting a ship and pointing your own ship towards it, which will use your ship's scanners and will reveal some information about it. It may do a scan of how its shields are functioning, or it may do a scan of how its thrusters are operating. This data can then be used for crafting. And of course, don't forget that NPCs actually drop various materials now when you destroy them. So all in all, there's a huge amount of changes coming with these two patches. I haven't covered all of them here. There's a few others, such as the changes to points of interest, as well as of course the introduction of ice mining, and probably a few other things I've forgotten about as well. So what are my thoughts on this big update itself? Well, keep in mind that I've only played beta so far. Of course, there are some things that may have changed by the time it hits the live servers, and on top of that, there's also some chance that a few other things will change over the coming weeks. And of course it's still way too early to say what type of effect the weapons and modules upgrades are going to have to the game overall, both on a PvP level and a PvE level. But as things stand right now, here are a few of my thoughts and feelings on the update itself. So overall, I'm really impressed with the content that the update has actually delivered. And one of the things I really do like is how it's introduced a lot of new little game loops into the process. Pretty much now, every activity you can do will feed back into the engineer's system. You can fly about just scanning ships, you can get involved in bounty hunting or just drop into a resource extraction site and either do some mining or blow up the pirates there. The pirates will drop some materials, or you can even get materials from the asteroids themselves, or even if you're driving around on the surface of planets in your SRV, no matter what you're doing, there will be an element that feeds back into the engineer upgrades. So whilst of course people are going to grind to get the required materials and data for their crafting, it's not entirely necessary because that stuff can be gained from doing any activity within the game itself, aside from trading perhaps, that is. And in many ways this all adds into the overall feeling of added life to the game, with the traffic control and with the NPC portraits, as well as of course the engineers and the bases themselves. It makes the universe feel a lot more alive and a bit more vibrant. So in terms of that content, I really do feel that this update is taking Elite in the right direction. Now onto the engineers themselves. I do have a bit of an issue with that, and it's not really the RNG aspect that bothers me so much as the amount of time sink that's actually required to get the components you want. Now I know many people may say that is a bit of a staple of games nowadays, but I've never actually been a fan of that sort of thing. Now I'm not saying it shouldn't take a lot of time to get various modules and weapon upgrades. What I am saying is that I feel perhaps it should be more centric to player skill rather than player time investment. For example, let's look at shield upgrades. Maybe the best shield upgrade should have a component that is only found on a particularly high-end and powerful NPC, something that is a challenge to kill and requires player skill in order to do so. Same for weapon upgrades. Maybe a key component for a top-end weapon upgrade should only be found, or should actually require, a player to survive an assault from a very deadly NPC. I see what the problem is here though. Essentially, it would require that every module will require a different element of gameplay to it, something to support its particular form of upgrade, and that would require perhaps an impossible amount of work on the behalf of Frontier. So, of course, in some ways this contradicts what I was saying earlier about the nice new game loops that are present. It's not the game loops that I have a problem with though, it's the amount of times that you may have to repeat those particular loops in order to actually get anywhere and achieve anything. But that seems to be the modern game design philosophy, and it certainly seems to be the philosophy underpinning a lot of the game mechanics behind Elite Dangerous. So for me, the new update is a bit of a mixed bag. It adds a whole lot of new content that I really like, and it does make the game feel much more alive. But at the same time, this update adds a huge amount of new time sinks into the game, something I'm really not a big fan of. Overall though, I feel that the engineers and patch 1.6 are a huge and positive step forward for Elite Dangerous. I just hope that the next patch, 2.2, doesn't take as long to get out as this one did. This was a point that was actually raised today to David Braben on Frontier's live stream, and the question was asked if it's the delay to patch 2.1 is going to affect the rest of the content from Season 2. His only answer to that was that the delay actually improved patch 2.1 quite significantly and was a positive thing. So take that how you will, but to me it suggested he was pre-justifying any future delays. So then, like I said, quite happy with the overall release of the patch 2.1, with a few things that I'm not quite so happy about. If though you're wondering whether it's time for you to return back to Elite Dangerous after an extended absence, I'd suggest having a look at this video right here, released today by Dr. Kai, and aimed at answering specifically that very question. You can see a link to this video in the video description below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time. Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant, and I'm out here on what I feel is a particularly important mission. Jack's station wants to jump, and it wants to go to the newly renamed Beagle Point, one of the furthest points we can currently reach within the entire galaxy.